Welcome to Saturday Night of the Movies. I'm your host, Glenn Holland. Saturday night's movie is The Man with the Golden Arm at 8 p.m. on WQLN PBS. Otto Preminger directed from a screenplay by William Newman, Louis Meltzer, and an uncredited Ben Hecht, adapted from Nelson Algren's 1949 novel of the same name. The Man with the Golden Arm stars Frank Sinatra, Eleanor Parker, and Kim Novak, with Arnold Stang, Darren McGavin, and Robert Strauss. In the late 1940s, Frankie Machine returns to his run-down Polish neighborhood on the near northwest side of Chicago after serving 6 months at a federal narcotics hospital in Lexington, Kentucky. At Antec's Tug and Mall Tavern, Frankie gets a warm welcome from the regulars, and especially from his best friend Sparrow, a simple-minded young thief who specializes in stealing and selling dogs. Among the bar's denizens is Frankie's former drug supplier, Nifty Louis Fomorowski, who offers Frankie a free fix to celebrate his homecoming. Frankie refuses the offer and tells Sparrow he's off drugs for good. He says he learned to play the drums while he was in rehab and has plans to join a jazz band. He shows Sparrows and the others the drums the staff at the narcotics hospital gave him as a going-away present. Since he wants to look his best when he auditions, Frankie sends Sparrow off to find him some new clothes. Then he returns to his old rooming house and his wife, Zosh, who is confined to a wheelchair. She was injured in a car crash when Frankie was driving drunk some 3 years before. Frankie married her when she was in the hospital, and Zosh has played on his guilt to keep her grip on him. She is pleased to see him at first, but gets upset about his plans to become a musician. She wants him to go back to making steady money dealing for the back alley poker games presided over by Zero Schweifska, where Frankie's machine-like precision has won him the nickname, the Man with the Golden Arm. But Frankie is determined to steer his life in a new direction, one that will lead to better days and away from the temptation to start taking drugs again. While on the rooming house's telephone to make an appointment for an audition with a band, Frankie sees an old flame, Nellie Novotny, who works as a hostess at a strip joint. He tells her about his plans to become a drummer, and Molly encourages him. Sparrow brings Frankie a new, borrowed suit, and they share a drink at Antec's Tavern. When Frankie sees Schweifska, he tells him he's starting a new career as a musician and won't be dealing cards for him anymore. Schweifska, infuriated, looks for a way to get the Man with the Golden Arm back dealing at his poker games, no matter what it takes. Writer Nelson Algren was born in Detroit, Michigan in March 1909, but grew up in a working-class neighborhood on the south side of Chicago. He graduated from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign with a degree in journalism in 1931 during the darkest days of the Great Depression. He wrote his first short story 2 years later before spending 3 weeks in jail for stealing a typewriter. Thereafter, jail scenes regularly appeared in his stories. Critic Elizabeth Oakes has said Algren's work reflected the lives of drunks, pimps, prostitutes, freaks, drug addicts, prize fighters, corrupt politicians, and hoodlums. Writer Rachel Kushner argued Algren didn't choose his subject. It chose him, and he went along. In 1949, Nelson Algren published The Man with the Golden Arm, now considered one of the seminal works of the post-World War II American literary scene. Golden Arm was a term Algren said he heard used by a man he called a little Italian bookie I knew in the Army. The novel won the National Book Award in 1950. Kurt Vonnegut taught with Algren at the Writers' Workshop of the University of Iowa in 1965. He wrote the foreword to a 2005 edition of The Man with the Golden Arm. Algren broke new ground by depicting persons said to be dehumanized by poverty and ignorance and injustice as being genuinely dehumanized, and dehumanized quite permanently. Algren said in effect, "Hey, an awful lot of these people your hearts are bleeding for are really mean and stupid. That's just a fact. Did you know that? The success of Nelson Algren's best-selling novel The Man with the Golden Arm led to producer Bob Roberts buying the screen rights with plans to feature John Garfield. But when Roberts submitted a screenplay to the Production Code Administration in 1950, director Joseph I. Breen ruled the story unacceptable. In view of the fact that this dope addiction problem is basic to the story, Breen wrote, we suggest you dismiss any further consideration of this material for a motion picture to be made within the code. After John Garfield died from heart disease at 39 in 1952, Otto Preminger acquired the rights to The Man with the Golden Arm. Preminger initially hired Algren to write a screen adaptation of his novel, but severe disagreements about the nature of the film version led Preminger to hire Walter Newman, a radio and screenwriter, in his place. Algren was unhappy with the money he received for the movie rights to his novel and with the substantial changes Preminger and Newman made to the story. These included changes in characters and much of the plot, including the imposition of a more or less happy ending. In the novel, Frankie accidentally kills Nifty Louie during a fight, goes on the lam, and ultimately hangs himself in his room in a flophouse. Marlon Brando was offered the role of Frankie Machine at about the same time as Frank Sinatra. Sinatra accepted the part without seeing the entire script before Brando even had a chance to read it. Sinatra prepared for the role by observing addicts go cold turkey at a rehabilitation clinic and learned to play drums from Shelley Mann, who later appeared in the film as the drummer at Frankie's audition. The role of Molly was Kim Novak's screen debut. Sinatra was particularly solicitous when working with the young actress and did his best to make her comfortable during the shooting. When the film was completed, the problem with the motion picture production code remained. When Preminger submitted the film to the Production Code Administration, he asserted that its portrayal of the dire effects of drug addiction would deter viewers from trying narcotics. The head of United Artists, Arthur Kim, emphasized the film's immense potential for public service, but also said the studio would release the film with or without the PCA's approval. When the PCA denied its seal of approval, United Artists withdrew from the PCA's parent organization, the Motion Picture Association of America, and released The Man with the Golden Arm to theater chains willing to forego the code's approval. The film's subsequent success led the MPAA to revise the production code to allow depiction of formerly taboo subjects. The film score for The Man with the Golden Arm was composed, arranged, and directed by Elmer Bernstein. A prolific film composer, Bernstein had been graylisted after appearing before the House Un-American Activities Committee in 1952, and had been relegated to scoring B movies, including 1953's infamously cheesy sci-fi Robot Monster. But Bernstein's work on The Man with the Golden Arm was masterful. AllMusic's Bradley Toriano has called it one of the finest jazz soundtracks to come out of the 50s. And on its own, it still shines as an excellent example of how good film music can get. The Man with the Golden Arm received mostly positive reviews. Critics were quick to laud Frank Sinatra's performance as Frankie, but also dwelt on the film's sordid subject matter and the familiarity of some of its characters. A review in Time magazine reported, "The picture is sometimes a penny dreadful because the scriptwriters have seldom consulted their hearts as carefully as they have calculated their effects. And sometimes it is an old-fashioned hellfire sermon against moral indolence." At its best, though, the story lays bare the naked truth of human bondage, and this truth shines like a sword. Author Nelson Algren was more dismissive. He was already disenchanted by his experiences in Hollywood. While many critics praise Sinatra's acting in the scenes where he goes cold turkey in Molly's apartment, Algren said, "Sinatra shook heroin like he shook a summer cold." When Algren's friend, Life magazine photographer Art Shea, asked the author to pose for a shot under the film's marquee, Algren reportedly responded, "What does that movie have to do with me?" Please join us again next time for another Saturday Night at the Movies. I'm Glenn Holland. Good night.